Do roll call for us.
Online, we have Cheryl Hartman, Christina Dewar, MCAT, and Missoula Current. In 206, we have Commissioner Strohmeyer and Slotnick, Allison Franz, Carrie Powers, John Hart, Chris Lounsbury, and myself, Annie Kathy.
Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment on items not on the agenda? Moving into the consent agenda, we have 2 items. Any questions on the consent agenda?
These look great to me. We approve the consent agenda.
I will second that. Any further discussion or public comment on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. I believe item 2 is for a remake of the movie Fargo that we're helping with.
I love that. When I see Chipper, that's right what I think of that as well. Well done.
Okay, action items. John Hart.
Commissioners, I have a proposed subdivision improvement agreement and guarantee for phase 3 of the O'Keefe Ranch Estates subdivision. This is a subdivision that was originally given preliminary approval in 2005. Phases 1 and 2 have been filed, and the developers are now ready to file phase 3. O'Keefe Ranch Estates is the subdivision on Waldo Road, west of Highway 93 and just north of Interstate 90. You might have seen a lot of activity there this summer. They are building out that subdivision at a rapid rate, including phase 3 is ready for plat. So there are some improvements that are remaining. And I didn't bring my glasses, but it looks like these are related. Many of these are related to park improvements. This subdivision, you might recall, the Board of County Commissioners created an RSID for park maintenance a few years ago, which has not been assessed, but will be assessed as soon as the park is completed. 20% of the park is going to be built as part of phase 3, and then the remaining 80% is built out during phase 4. So they're bonding. Well, they're securing some of the park improvements, and then it looks like there's also some paving left to be done, and probably some sidewalks. It looks like sidewalks, curbs and gutters, ADA ramps. The estimated cost of those improvements with a 25% contingency and is $266,386. The developer, who is Ryan Build Homes LLC, that's a Spokane, Washington LLC, is agreeing to complete these improvements by January 7th of 2026. And so within the next year, and has provided a standby letter of credit from Mountain West Bank, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, in that amount that will guarantee the building those improvements. So, yeah. And I've reviewed the agreement. I've actually signed it already because I recommend that you do the same.
Okay.
Thanks.
Pretty straightforward.
Thanks for that, Jonathan. I would move we approve the subdivision improvement agreement.
Second that. Further discussion or comment on this one? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, John, for keeping on top of all of those.
I'm happy to sign the original, just like the good old days.
Just like the good old days. I see 3 commissioners slots here. Okay.
The developer will record it.
The developer will record it.
Send you a copy that I scan before I take it to the recorder's office.
Perfect. Here, Jess.
Thank you.
Okay.
What is that?
How about a legislative update, Chris?
Yeah, good morning, commissioners. Just a couple of bills to cover today. The first one I want to bring to your attention, both of these are in the area of property taxes and property tax relief. So the Democratic bill that is largely sponsored by most of the Democrats in the House is looks like going to move here and be scheduled for hearing, and that's House Bill 155. House Bill 155 does two things. So it creates a homestead exemption. So it exempts the first certain amount of the value of a property. It's also applies to multifamily housing, so rentals and others as well. And then it creates a graduated scale on the tax rate in that that goes up to a maximum of 2% for homes that are greater than $2 million in value. And then I want to talk about these together. So I'm also going to talk about the second bill just really quickly, and then we'll talk about them together and how we might want to approach our messaging around this. The second is House Bill 213, which is has been introduced and only adjusts the tax rates for residential property as opposed to having an exemption like a homestead exemption in it. And so that one adjusts the home rates down from the current 1.35% for residential property down to 0.76% for residential property that is less than $1.5 million, which is the current delineation is 1.5 million, and then above 1.5 million. Currently, the tax rate for those is 1.4%, so it goes up a 0.5%.
Make sure I heard you right. Did you say 0.76?
0.76.
That is fantastically low.
Yeah, as I say, and then this one would lower the rate above $1.5 million in value to 1.35% from the current 1.4% that the tax rate is. So I wanted to talk about these kind of in the bigger scheme of how we want to approach messaging around property tax relief for this legislative session. So, of course, Commissioner Slotnick, you have been talking about property taxes
Occasionally
a lot. And obviously the other commissioners have been engaged in that space as well. But when we think about how we want to message both on these two bills and on other bills, it's at this point, I think I've read about 30 bills related to property teases, and we're fairly early in the session at week 2.5 or 2. There's 81 days left in the legislative session, or 82 days left in the legislative session. And it would be really difficult for us to calculate the actual tax impacts, both to homeowners and to the county's budget for every one of those 30 bills in any meaningful way. And so we probably need to come up with a general message around property tax relief. And some of these, we actually see how some of these are going to move through the legislative process, and then we can spend time refining our message and actually getting to a point where we can include some meaningful information around what it will do both to property taxpayers as well as county finances. When we know which ones are actually moving forward, because there's just too large volume for us to do that and try and calculate every one of those. And so my thought is to craft a more generalized message that hits kind of on the points that you all have made around property taxes, which, so they would focus on the idea of we recognize the shift towards residential, the need to lower the impact to property taxpayers while still funding critical government services. And Carrie and Allison are here, and they'll make it sound so much better than I'm doing right now. But I think that's probably where we need to focus our message right now. Is just in general, we are supportive of the tax measures as they move forward. There will be some that we will have to oppose because they just create, I'm going to call them outsized shifts in burden away from that. And so, there are some bills that have been proposed that will potentially, reduce all property tax classes to be at like one universal tax rate across pretty much all property tax classes. While that would reduce the overall amount that an individual might pay for taxes, it would also have an outsized budget or outsized impact on budget, because there wouldn't be a way to still raise the revenue necessary for governments and schools to be able to function. Because again, local governments and schools are pretty much 100% funded by property taxes with very few exceptions. And so to be clear, not 100% of our budget is property taxes, but 100% of our taxing authority is in property taxes. Right. And that is also true for local schools. 100% of their taxing authority is property taxes. There's other things like state aid and federal money and those kinds of things, but our ability to actually control our revenue picture really is around that property tax piece. That's the part that we have some limited control.
Can I ask you a question? It may be too early.
Yeah.
For this. What's the, I don't, I'm gonna start to say it differently. The governor's really made a priority out of a homestead exemption, and he's talked quite a bit about this. Is there a bill that reflects his interests that is kind of emerging?
So we understand that those bills are being drafted, but
They're
they
not there
they
yet.
have not been assigned bill numbers yet. Once
Okay.
they get assigned a bill number and they're no longer an LC, that's when we actually have language that we can read and kind of make those determinations. And we're not even to that point where those bills
Thanks.
have made it that far. So again, I think our best messaging at this point is just going to be a little generic, and that is going to be both on our side and I'm sure on the legislative delegation side a little unsatisfactory because we can't provide kind of full-throated support for any one concept in the way that we might versus being able to point out some of the challenges in ones where we know where we'll have this kind of outsized impact.
Most likely over the next handful of weeks, things will shake out. There will be a few that are destined to become law or not.
Yeah, and there will definitely be, I mean, to be clear, I anticipate that there will be some negotiation between, for example, the bill that I mentioned earlier, that is the Democratic bill around the homestead exemption and everything. I imagine there will be some version of compromise that comes out if the governor's bill focuses around homestead exemption as well, that there'll be some negotiation and compromise on how all of that looks. But again, that's why I think it's really hard for us to do a ton of the back end math now for every one of these bills as they try and move forward.
There's some principles that I would throw out to sort of conversationally. I think we would want to keep in mind that generally we'd be good to support a reduction in tax rate for people who own homes that are roughly the median priced home, generally speaking. That's a good principle. I think it would also be great for bills in the, if we had our way on designing bills, would love to see a bill that took into account the economic diversity that's represented across our state.
Yeah, certainly the taxing picture looks very different in eastern Montana than it does in western Montana for sure. So
And an open-ended question, I wonder if rather than putting dollar amounts on these things, house that's $1 million or 1.5, whatever, if we were to, it's just open-ended question. If it was possible to say something like, within each county, if a house is at 100% of median home price, the tax rate is X. For every 20% above median home price, it goes up. Why? Because the median home price in Gallatin County and the median home price in Golden Valley County are dramatically different. And what is in one place a modest house may be quite a wealthy property in another, or vice versa. And a little leery of one size fits all when our counties represent such diverse economies.
yeah, I think that is one of the challenges under the current property tax structure, right? Is this concept of equalization, which can not a lawyer, not going to put John on the spot as a lawyer because there just are these really broad legal concepts around equalization and what that means under the tax law. And John is certainly welcome to weigh in if he wants to. But I think that is the challenge when we start talking about doing it different county by county.
I mean, I wonder.
But I agree, but I don't disagree with the idea that the realities are really different, and it would be great if there were a way to set the tax system to recognize some of those differences.
I mean, do you think, I guess we're not putting you on the spot, but just conversationally, is equalization, would we be meeting the demand for equalization by saying 100% of median home price in every county would use a tax rate of X and 120% would be X plus that? So it's the same percentages everywhere, but it's taking into account that the median home price in each county is different. And this info is available at the DOR now, given that they assess the value of homes.
Sorry,
No, it's all right.
it's got to be complicated.
For sure, for
Such
sure.
as taxes should be, it's got to be complicated.
Yeah, the context is everything and context is complex.
I mean, I frankly don't understand how they can even be contemplating charging out of people out of state more property taxes than somebody who actually lives in their house in state. Those start to conjure up all sorts of constitutional questions for me, but I don't know much about taxation. Maybe you cannot treat everyone equally when it comes to taxes.
You can certainly charge people out of state a higher price for a hunting license in the state of Montana
Correct.
somehow.
So, you know, these things, maybe that's the theory.
And there was a time when you go to Washington State and if you had an ID from somewhere else, you wouldn't have to pay their sales tax. But that was determined to be unconstitutional.
So it was.
Yeah, with the Commerce Clause of the US
I
Constitution.
wondered why that went away.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I think given the uncertainties with bills out there and how many there are, having some general message that we can provide is a good idea.
Yeah, and I mean, to be clear, you know, the commission, both individually, commissioners and the commission has worked really hard on the property tax issue. It is the challenge we see every year when we head into budgeting, which of course started this month for the county as well, so that we can be ready when the time comes this summer to talk about preliminary budget. And yeah, so it's definitely a priority area for us.
In the last handful of years, we've seen an increase in 50% of the burden of property taxes fall on the shoulders of homeowners and renters. So anything that would adjust tax rates down for homeowners and renters, especially those who are living in median priced homes, would be pretty favorable.
Okay, anything else?
No, the only other piece, just Dave, you already know this, but just for folks, is SB 130, which is the bill related to the removal of the need for a reason to recall an elected official. That is up for hearing on Monday, and we will we'll help you get scheduled to testify on that. Montana Association of Counties is asking that local elected officials join as part of that and provide testimony. And so we'll work on some talking points for you and to get you registered for it.
Thanks for doing that.
Sure. Excellent. Okay, hey,
That is it.
Martin, and do you have any questions for us?
No, I don't. Chris was pretty thorough in his explanation.
Great. Thanks, Martin.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. I think that is all we have today.
Okay, everyone have a great day and a great weekend.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Bye.